to be about JUnit testing in Java. Let's create a new project. Java project. We'll do it in main. We don't need a main. Let's not have a main. See what happens when we do that. Let's call this testing. Doesn't like testing. Let's try unit testing. All right. We have source. Now, normally in a project, let me show you a project that has a real file setup. This is just off the cuff here. Let's go to we need a Maven project. So we need a Maven project. Oh, Spring Social Login will be a Maven project. Okay, here's Spring Social Login. And if I do a tree on the source directory, all right, so see this? Source up here has a subdirectory main. And under there it has Java, and then it has the package com example, blah, blah, blah. Also has some resources for the web. But as a sibling to main, there's a test directory. So main has main Java com example. Test has test Java com example. They are mirrors of each other. And so over here, here you can see we have a demo application.java, and in the test directory we have a demo application test.java. So this is the way you do things in a Maven project, which you'll learn about later. But the point is that normally your tests are separate from your source code. In this case, I just want to show you how to write a test. So I'm just going to put it in the source tree, but it's not the norm. And I'm going to call it list test, because we're going to test, or list test, singular, plural, don't really care. Oh, and by the way, we are going to take a little side here, and we're going to go import the JUnit library. File, do this slowly, project, click on libraries, click the plus sign from Maven, and you can put in the fully qualified name, but if you don't know what it is, you just type part of the name like JUnit. And you hit enter, and you'll see this over here. You see the spinner, and it says how many it found. And the internet is doing its thing. Found 152, and we want JUnit. We'll take the JUnit. You know, there's a lot here. A lot of choices for these libraries. A lot of people have a JUnit library. We're going to take this JUnit 4.1.2. And how I chose that one, well, that's the most common one. And I grabbed the most recent version of the most common one. And I just hit enter, 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 or click OK, 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 all the defaults. Okay, so now if we click our external libraries here, we see we have a JUnit library as one of our external libraries. So list test, and what you do is you annotate a test with @test. And you see how we have two, it's org.junit, so I'm going to choose that one. And public void. So what I thought we would test is, we just did a video about collections, so I thought we would just test the list interface, just for no better reason than there's methods there that we can test. So I'm going to call it about test what, test crud? Test add. Call it. Right now I'm just going to test the adding method, which is really a misnomer because we're you have to get after you do an add to make sure it's there. So I'm going to do a list of strings names. That's what I did in the last one. Equals, one equals, new array list. And then I'm going to, should be names. A list should be plural. Names dot add my name, Gil. Okay. Now we want to assert that list Gil got added to the list. So assert dot. Let's make sure which assert. Yeah. See assert org.junit. That's the one we want. Dot. Assert equals or assert true. Okay, let's do it. We'll do an assert true and an assert equal. So assert true, you give it the Boolean condition. Assert true. There's all the asserts true. Now you can give it a message. It's nice to give it a message. And the message is what shows if there is an error. Should be size 1. And then you do your truth condition, and we're going to do names.size equals 1, double equals. Okay, and run that, and it's not going to be that interesting, but we'll run it. So when you run a unit test, it's a little bit different here at the bottom. A green bar shows, success, and you'll see red if there's failures. Here's the test here. If I click on the test, doesn't really show me much. It's more interesting if there's a failure. So I'm going to make a failure. I'm going to say, hey, I want the size should be 2, which is a bug in my unit test. And I'm going to run that. Oh, that's red. Here it is. We got an assert error, and the asserts error says, and right here we can click on it. It says list test line 17. All right, and here it is. Here's my message. Should be size 1. You see that right there? Should be size 1, and it is an assertion error. And I can click on this link, and it takes me up to line 17 where the problem is. And that's neat because if the file wasn't sitting there in front of you, it would bring it to the foreground and take you to the line. Let's do a couple tests here. Let's let one pass and one fail. Whoa. Right now we will just do the same test, but the second one's going to succeed. Let's just see what the output looks like. All right, now over here, see how test add 2 is green, but test add is red, and there's the problem for test add. So you can, and over here, 2 tests done, 1 failed. That's nice. Get some fairly nice, well, you would hope so. You would hope your test would point to the error, so that's good. All right. Let's get back to our original test, and we really should do one more thing. And what we really should do, string name equals Gil. So save the reference so that we can test against it later. Assert dot, let's do assert equals this time. Assert equals, and you can give it a message. Name should be Gil, or name should be, to be even more precise. Name. Now, first parameter, put your, this is expected, and the second one is the actual. Let's do that. Names dot get 0. All right, so let's take a look at this method. Assert equals a string that'll show up if the assertion fails. Second parameter is our expected value, and the third parameter is, oh no, I'm sorry, second parameter and the third parameter are the two things that it's going to do equals on. That's what I meant to say. So let's run that, and that should be hunky-dory. Okay, that's cool. Let me show you a couple problems that show. Let's say I code and I'm going to go try to get something that isn't there. Then I'll get, the test will throw an exception, and I'll see that. We'll see that the test failed. Hey, your test failed, and you got an index out of bounds exception. Let's go back, get 0, but let's, instead of Gil, let's do Jill, okay? And that will be an error. And the error is comparison failure. And there's my string. Name should be Gil. Oh, and look at this. Nice. So this expected and actual, so it is what I was trying to allude to before. So what we'd really do here to make this more correct, we expect Gil, but we got back Jill. That's more like it. Let's run that. Here we go. There's my message. Name should be Gil. Expected Gil. Actual Jill. So that's how these assertion tests work, and they just work over and over again. The only other thing that's of interest is let's test and when we get an exception. And we're going to call test out of bounds. So again, another array list with Gil in it. Well, let's not put anything in it. Let's just comment that out at the moment. So we're going to assert no, we're going to do a try catch. So we're going to say, hey, names dot get 100, or even just 1 is enough. And we should get an array out of bounds exception. We run this, and we can just run this one test. If I right-click in that, come on, if I click in the method body, right-click, I can say run this one test because it's context sensitive. And it worked because we did catch an exception. I'm going to put a little system out here just so we can see that it happened. All good. Let's run it again. There it is. All good. I just put that in there so we can see it something. Because that's not what's really interesting. Normally when our tests succeed, we expect them to succeed. What we got to do here is we got to put a fail here. Because if we don't get the exception, should have gotten index out of bounds exception. That's quite an acronym. Let's cut and paste. Okay. So this is the norm here. And if I run this, it'll succeed. and I'm just running this one test again because that's all that is over here on the left side. If I hit the green button, I can run one test. If I click on that test, I can run that one. Okay, it's green, it's good. So let's say I have a bug in my test, and let's say I add one to the list, and then I say, hey, when I get the first one, I should get an exception. But I'm not going to get an exception on this case. I'm going to fall through to line 32, and I'm going to fail. Let's run that. I should have failed. Names.getOne, and I should get an insert fail. Oh, silly me. 0. 0 based. Duh. There it is. Okay, so I said getting 0 should have given me an exception. It didn't. So then I have this assert fail. I say, hey, this test fails because I should have gone into the catch and I didn't. I got egg on my face when I said get 1 instead of get 0, but it's good to see things mess up and then get corrected. And you're going to do this in your test case. Your test cases are going to be kind of like your code in that they're not going to be perfect and you might have bugs in your test case. But believe me, if you write enough test cases with checking all the edge cases, you'll find those bugs in your code before the code goes to production. But you write a lot of test cases. As a Java backend server developer, this is your job. Your job is to write test cases and have test coverage. I think we can run with coverage. Let's do this now. I can either click up here, right click up here at the top of the file, and it will say, hey, run the file. I can go over here and I can right click on this and it can say run the file. And I'm going to do this run with coverage just to see what that does. Oh, I still got a test failure. I should, oh, there's my coverage. I'm going to close this. I'll leave it there. Let's make my test pass. And I'm going to run with coverage again. All right, what's failing? Oh, test add is failing. Oh, because we have that Jill thing here. I left that in. Name dot get 0. Run again. Oh, there it is. You know what's interesting is my run with coverage says, hey, your test case has 100%. You're running 100% of your code in your test case. But we're not testing any class that we wrote, so I don't see the other class. Interesting. So I would have to write, if I was testing a bean, let's do that real quick. Let's do something like a new Java class, and let's call the class foo. And we'll just do this. We'll just do private Boolean flag. And let's just generate getters and setters for it. Okay, now let's go back to our test case. You can go away for a moment, test coverage. Let's go back to our test case and let's do a test foo. Now it should be in its own class, not this test list class, but that's okay. Let's get rid of all this. All right, foo, test, foo equals new foo. Come on, I like spacing. Boom. And let's do, let's assert, okay, do you know this? Do you know that the default value for the Boolean is false. If we don't call the setter on it, just by newing up this class, the default for Boolean is false, the default for any number is 0, and the default for any object is null. Okay, so the Boolean flag here is defaults to false. So let's do a little test. Assert dot true. And you don't have to put it in a message. Foo dot get is flag equals false. Let's run that. Let's just run it normally first. Make sure it works. And all we're doing is calling the getter. We're not calling the setter. Boom, that worked. Now let's run this. Let's run this with coverage. Run foo test with coverage. Code coverage. Do you want to display the coverage data? Do not apply collective coverage. Add active suites. Replace active suites. Sure, I don't know. Take the default. I don't know what that means. There it is. So see now down here at the bottom, our test case. This is interesting. I can double click on this to make it bigger, I believe. Nope. All right. Our test case, well, we did test the class 101. That's kind of obvious. But we only tested a third of the methods. And we only ran 25% of the lines. We ran 4 out of 16. But for the foo class, we only tested 1 of 2 methods, and we tested half of the lines of code. And that's because we didn't call the setter, right? We never tested in foo this method, set. Okay, so let's just wrap this up, and we'll call set, and then we'll look at the coverage. Foo dot set flag to true, and then we'll assert that it's true. And that's all I got to do. Because that returns true, and that's the same as this, right? Let's run that. We'll run the foo test. We'll run it with coverage. There it is. Now we have 100% right here on for the foo. I'm going to click above it so it's still got a white background. Right here we for the methods, this column is methods. We tested 2 of 2, and the lines in the class we hit 4 of 4. So got 100% coverage testing foo. Anyhow, that's testing. Just a little recap. That's JUnit testing. A little recap is annotate a test with @test, and then it's all about asserts. Assert this, assert that, you know, and you assert all your green paths and all your edge cases. The only other thing interesting to say is that normally this becomes a static import. Let's look at our imports here real quick. See how everything, there's no word static up there, but because we do assert dot, assert dot, assert dot, assert dot over and over again, we will normally make that a static import. And now, see, now assert true is a static import, so I can just say assert true. And imagine I can do assert star here. But I think on my IntelliJ set up to not do star, but that worked. Assert fail, just call fail. Yes. Yep, look, it already did it for me right here. Assert true, assert true. So You'll see this a lot in test cases. You'll see a static import right here. And I got my IntelliJ to say, don't use wildcards, import each one individually. So we got our three static imports here, and we can just call the method here. We don't have to call it as a static method.